Greetings and salutations, Earthlings, fellow participants in the third dimensional experience. This is Robert Phoenix coming at you live from Austin, Texas. I apologize for the delay in getting on today's show a bit late. I was having some issues with some files that I was trying to upload to the site today, and in particular the interview that I did with Steve and Krys Crimi, which took place on Monday of this week. And it was a really kind of timely interview because it all started with last week when I got into Blade Runner 2049, and it's had a really interesting kind of resonance kick with people, and especially Steve and Krys. Steve, they both went out and saw the film after I did, so they wanted to see what it was all about, and we have about an hour jam session where we break down the film, and Steve gets into some of the mythology that's associated with the movie itself. Now, in the days after Blade Runner 2049, man, has the AI thing exploded into our faces or what? You know, I know you're all very astute, and we live in the electronic village, and the echo chamber is the ricochet of collective thought, and you're all in there with me to a large extent. So I may be covering ground that you've already covered before over the last 48 hours, and if not, hang on. Very interesting developments taking place. The first AI has been given citizenship by Crown Prince Salman, who has a vision, and an ambitious vision it is. And we actually talk a little bit about this in the interview with Steve and Krys and myself. We don't really come right out and say what we're, what this thing that is approaching us is. I reference it as part of kind of the wet dream of the Venus Project. And if you haven't looked at the Venus Project, it's worth taking a look at. What's the guy's name? Jacques. I forget his last name now. It's been such a long time since I delved into the Venus Project. But the Venus Project, the whole idea behind it is that the future of society. And I was kind of into it when I first discovered it. I thought, oh my God, this is really cool, right? Here, just let me just pop this up here. I want to make sure that I get all the names right, because it's important for me to do that. Jacques Fresco. And the symbol for the Venus Project is a V, which really kind of looks like the V for victory in 1984, and the depiction of it in the last version of the film, which starred Richard Burton and John Hurt. It's a terrifying movie. Even the first version of 1984 is terrifying, but the one that came out in 1984, oh boy, what a cold vision of the future that is. Anyway, there's also this notion of V, which is, if you go back and look at the TV series that was first aired during the 1980s, I guess late 1970s, early 1980s, the TV series V is all about the seeding of alien consciousness inside of humans. And of course, there was a remake of V that happened again a couple of years ago. And the Venus Project, we've already noted that Venus, long time ago, Venus is consonant with the Lord of Light, Lucifer, the morning star, the one that rises before the sun. Yes, that's Venus. Now, Mercury will rise before the sun, but we can't see Mercury. But we can see Venus. Now, there are some people who say, well, that's not Venus, that's Sirius. That's another debate for another time. But that's why Venus holds such high power and esoteric esteem and regard in our culture, because it rises before the sun. It supplants the sun for a certain part of the year. Yes, it's true. It's the same time that Sirius also will rise before the sun as well, even occlude the sun. This is true. Hence the dog days of summer, aka the dog days of Sirius, Sirius the dog star. But Anyway, this is why Venus is held in such high esteem, because it supplants the sun, which is theoretically the god of our solar system. So for a few months, Venus becomes the usurper in the northern hemisphere, right? It ranks, it rises above it. So hence the light bringer, or the dawn bringer, or the bringer of the new dawn, because that's what Venus does. It cracks the sky before the sun does. I watched it. I watched it in a beach in Florida over the summer, and it was actually quite spectacular in a lot of ways, and especially in the midst of a light thunder and lightning storm. It was very atmospheric. So I could see why it would capture the mythos of the mind and the imagination of the high priests, viziers, sorcerers, stargazers, those who whispered into the ears of kings and queens, for that matter. Hey, I got a film for you to check out. We're going to get into a lot of this stuff today, a lot of this AI stuff, but it all goes back to, guess what? It all goes back to Atlantis, which is where we're headed now, the new incarnation of Atlantis, and I've been talking about this for years. I've got Chiron and Aquarius. I am the herald of the dangers of those times, and they are a-coming. The wild and woolly days of Atlantis are upon us. We have AI, we have the chimeras that are coming, we have all kinds of miscegenation between silicon and carbon and human and animal and plant. Where do you see the plant people? Oh, yeah. You think this is just going to be relegated to a crossbreed of a human and a pig? Oh no, there's more to come. Get ready for your minds to be blown and your reality to be challenged as these new models of experimentation basically go unheeded. You know what was really interesting, in my jump back to the 90s yesterday, when I was looking at events, one of the things that Clinton did, which I thought was fascinating, was he actually banned cloning research while he was president of the United States. I thought that was really interesting. Of course, that didn't mean very much, did it? Looking back on the 90s and that small little act of presidential power and flex. No, it didn't matter much at all. So the Venus Project, Jacques Fresco, this guy Jacques Fresco used to make models for Revell, I think, one of the model companies. So he's a big model maker. Made a lot of money as being a model maker. So what he would do is he'd have a vision in his head about a model, and then he would create the blueprint and the template and have all the little pieces attached to those little plastic rods, and people would have the directions and the schematic, and they'd put these models together. Well, that was all of Jacques Fresco's. A lot of it was Jacques Fresco's creations, especially the ones that were futuristic. So I believe he's still around. He's an old coot. But let's see, what do we got here? Oh, he died. He died this year. I wasn't aware of that. I was just looking at his wiki. He died on May 18th. May 18th, 2017. So just at the beginning of, pretty much the beginning of the year, springtime, May 18th. Jacques lived a mighty long life. He lived to be 101. 101. How about that? So the Venus Project, and the whole idea behind the Venus Project, is that there would be a city center, kind of a utopian kind of experience, which when I get into the concept of Neom, which is the dream now of Prince Salman, Crown Prince Salman, of the Saudi Arabian kingdom, the House of Saud, they're very much aligned with one another. Now, one of the things that the Venus Project would take advantage of course, is new technologies. Solar, whatever it is, right? Whatever technology was available to get us off the carbon imprint path, that was all going to be part of the Venus Project. The other part of the Venus Project is the whole idea of social credit, that there would be no money, but there would be an exchange on some level for a service or a thing that you did. Now, you wouldn't own it, right? But it would be in somehow representative of whatever gift or service you're providing to the community. So the other thing with the Venus Project is that there would be a load. Like there's a load, the theoretical load that the planet has. And the load is how many people, how many resources are being used. All these things are compiled into what the planet can handle. And then everything above the planet's load needs to be eliminated. So if the planetary load had a certain number of people associated with it, and then the planet couldn't handle any more of those people based on resources, production, efficiency, the environment, all those things, well, something would have to go. And it would be the people. Anyway, that's just one of the dirty little secrets of the Venus Project. But it's interesting now because we have NEOM, which has emerged this past week. NEOM and the first AI, which has been granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia. Very interesting that we now have an AI that is a citizen of the Crown Prince and his people and the kingdom, I guess it is, because that's really what it is. It's a kingdom. It is not a democracy. It's not a republic. It's a kingdom. So she's been granted, or it's been granted, citizenship. Now, it's been given kind of this female face and female voice and female inflection and all these things that soften the image of the AI. But it could be anything, right? They could change it. They could change the voice. They could turn it into a male. They could change the eyelash and the facial structure a little bit. Next thing you know, you've got a different representation of the AI consciousness, or not even conscious, the AI intelligence. There is no consciousness there. Unless it's this silicon consciousness that Barbara Marx Hubbard has talked about and warned us about in her talks and her channelings. So we have the NEOM project. So guess when NEOM is supposed to hit the streets? 2030. 2030, that's 13 years from now, the magic number 13. And it also is in alignment with what? Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. It's part of Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030. And Vision 2030, I'm going straight to the Saudi Arabian websites. And this is what King Solomon has to say. My primary goal is to be an exemplary and leading nation in all aspects, and I will work with you in achieving this endeavor. Our vision, Saudi Arabia, the heartbeat of the Arab and Islamic worlds, the investment powerhouse and the hub connecting 3 continents. So this is his vision statement. It is my pleasure to present Saudi Arabia's vision for the future. It is an ambitious yet achievable blueprint which expresses our long-term goals and expectations and reflects our country's strengths and capabilities. All success stories start with a vision, and successful visions are based on strong pillars. The first pillar of our vision is our status as the heart of the Arab and Islamic worlds. Okay, that excludes Syria, that excludes Iraq, that excludes Iran, that excludes any of the other countries surrounding Saudi Arabia. We recognize that Allah the Almighty has bestowed on our lands a gift more precious than oil. Our kingdom is the land of 2 holy mosques, the most sacred sites on earth, and the direction of the Kaaba, to which more than 1 billion Muslims turn at prayer. Let me see if I can get this to open up a little bit more here. The second pillar of our vision is our determination to become a global investment powerhouse. Our nation holds strong investment capabilities, which we will harness to stimulate our economy and diversify our revenues. A third pillar is transforming our unique strategic location into a global hub connecting 3 continents: Asia, Europe, and Africa. Our geographic position between key global waterways makes the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia an epicenter of trade and a gateway to the world. Our country is rich in its natural resources. We are not solely dependent on oil for our energy needs. Gold, phosphate, uranium, and many other valuable minerals are found beneath our lands, but our real wealth lies in the ambition of our people. I mean, his ambition. I'm not sure about his people. I think they're getting pulled along for the ride. Let's see, the ambition of our people. And the potential of our younger generation. Okay, this is an important part because Solomon is a millennial. He is a millennial. And along with Jared Kushner, probably might be the 2 most powerful millennials on the planet. I'm going to get into his chart a little bit, not intensely. I'm going to save some of that for Sunday night when we do the live stream. Let's see. Yes. They are our nation's pride and the architects of our future. We will never forget how, under tougher circumstances than today, our nation was forged by collective determination when the late King Abdulaziz al-Saud, may Allah bless his soul, united the kingdom. Our people will amaze the world again. We are confident about the kingdom's future. With all the blessings of Allah has bestowed on our nation, we cannot help but be optimistic about the decades ahead. We ponder what lies over the horizon rather than worrying about what could be lost. The future of the kingdom, my dear brothers and sisters, is one of huge promise and great potential, God willing. Our precious country deserves the best. Therefore, we will expand and further develop our talents and capacity. We will do our utmost to ensure that Muslims from around the world can visit the holy sites. We're determined to reinforce and diversify the capabilities of our economy, turning our key strengths into enabling tools for a fully diversified future. As such, we will transform Aramco from an oil-producing company into a global industrial conglomerate. We will transform the Public Investment Fund into the world's largest sovereign wealth fund. We will encourage our major corporations to expand across borders and take their rightful place in global markets. As we continue to give our Army the best possible machinery and equipment from the United States, we plan to manufacture half our military needs within the kingdom to create more job opportunities for citizens and keep more resources in our country. We'll expand the variety of digital services to reduce delays and cut tedious bureaucracy. We will immediately adopt wide-ranging transparency and accountability reforms, and through the body set up to measure the performance of government agencies, hold them accountable for any shortcomings. This is kind of interesting talk in some ways. Right? You sit there and you stroke your chin and go, that's interesting. Really now, okay. This is a very different kind of vision, a very different kind of definition of Saudi Arabia and its people and where it's headed. We will be transparent and open about our failures as well as our successes, and will welcome ideas on how to improve. Well, we've heard that one before, haven't we? All this comes from the directive of the custodian of the 2 holy mosques, King Solomon bin Abdulaziz al-Saud. May Allah protect him, who ordered us to plan for a future that fulfills your ambitions and your aspirations. In line with this, his instructions, we work tirelessly from today to build a better tomorrow for you, your children, and your children's children. Our ambition is for the long term. It goes beyond replenishing resources of income that have weakened or preserving what we have already achieved. We are determined to build a thriving country in which all citizens can fulfill their dreams, hopes, and ambitions. Therefore, we will not rest until our nation is a leader in providing opportunities for all through education and training and high-quality services such as employment initiatives, health, housing, and entertainment. We commit ourselves to providing world-class government services which effectively and efficiently meet the needs of our citizens. Together, we will continue building a better country, fulfilling our dream of prosperity and unlocking the talent, potential, and dedication of our young men and women. We will not allow our country ever to be at the mercy of a commodity price volatility or external markets. That last sentence is really important. really, really important because there's a lot happening with the petrodollar and the Chinese yuan. Now, Saudi Arabia did a deal with Nixon a long time ago for the exchange for arms, protection, whatever it is that Nixon was offering in exchange for Saudi Arabia to only agree to take the U.S. dollar for oil. Okay, so you know the story. If you want to get and have wanted to get oil from Saudi Arabia, if you were Italy, you had to transfer your lira into a dollar. It's really that simple. And then you could send it to Saudi Arabia, and then those dollars would get exchanged into credits in their account, which don't really translate into real dollars, but electronic credits into an account. That's been going on for a long time with them. So now the yuan or the Chinese are offering up the petro yuan, and what they're basically saying now is that you can take the yuan, and then we have gold because the Chinese have been buying huge amounts of gold, so they have a gold-backed yuan now, and you can trade that yuan at any point in time for gold. Like, so you take the yuan, you have these yuans, you want gold, you got it. We'll ship it over to you. It should be very interesting how that occurs, how that happens. Anyway, so this sentence is really what Prince Salman is talking about. We will not allow our country ever be at the mercy of a commodity price volatility or external markets. We have all the means to achieve our dreams and ambitions. There are no excuses for us to stand still or move backwards. Our vision is strong, thriving, and stable Saudi Arabia that provides an opportunity for all. Our vision is a tolerant country with Islam and its constitution and moderation as its method. So this is a departure from the hardcore Salafist, Wahhabist vision of Islam. Whether or not that's true remains to be seen, but he's offering up a different model. Remember, he's a millennial, and they want to do something different, okay? I don't care if he's the Crown Prince of Saud, he's a millennial. Okay, where are we? We will welcome qualified individuals from all over the world, and will respect those who have come to join our journey and our success. We intend to provide better opportunities for partnerships with the private sector through the three pillars: our position as the heart of the Arab and Islamic worlds, our leading investment capabilities, and our strategic geographical position. We will improve the business environment so that our economy grows and flourishes, driving healthier employment opportunities for citizens and long-term prosperity for all. This promise is built on cooperation and mutual responsibility. This is our Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030. We will begin immediately delivering the overarching plans and programs we have set out. Together, with the help of Allah, we can strengthen the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's position as a great nation in which we should all feel an immense pride. Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, Chairman of the Council of Economic and Development Affairs. So this is really interesting because on the one hand, what he's proclaiming is kind of a nationalist vision of Saudi Arabia, which, interestingly enough, kind of takes it out of this medieval pocket that Saudi Arabia has been living in for centuries. So there is a kind of a nationalist vibe to this, right? Is it so different than, say, what China is talking about in their vision for China, which Xi Jinping has come out and said, and talking about the next 100 years for China. So we have these countries that are latching onto these kind of visionary predictions or probabilities, their own version of a prophecy for their country, which in many ways is very nationalistic. Like there's a piece here where he's talking about, we'll welcome people to join us, right? But it's not to join us to create a country that is at the heart of a global revolution, right? Because they're already globalists in their own way. What he's basically saying is we'll take people in who are really qualified, but they're going to be working towards this vision of Saudi Arabia, the 2030 vision of Saudi Arabia. And Xi Jinping has said the same thing about China. And I think that this is actually an important message. This is really, because what do people inside of a country or inside of a system live for? They live for something that's bigger than themselves, something that's greater than themselves. They want to co-sign, and whether or not this is a bunch of bullshit, and the same things go on in Saudi Arabia that have been going on there for, the last, 400 or 500 years, that's a whole other question to be determined. Right? This might just be, window dressing in a lot of ways, but maybe it's not. And maybe Salman, who isn't a millennial, is being authentic with this. Now, he's also a Virgo, which is important to note. He's a Virgo. He was born August 31st, 1985, and he was born on a full moon in Pisces. He also has Jupiter in Aquarius, and it is in sextile with his natal Uranus in Sagittarius, true node in Taurus, so he's a builder. He's a builder. And his Chiron is in Gemini at 14 degrees. Those are just the rough things. I'm going to get into more of his chart on Sunday night's show. But with that Jupiter in Aquarius, of course, the sextile to Uranus, he's going to be future-oriented. And for the most part, I believe that Virgos tend to be, for the most part, pretty trustworthy. Like, Virgo does not often, drive outside the lines. So if this is this guy's vision, based on his Virgoan sun, there's probably, some link to a level of authenticity. If he is a Leo, boy, who knows, right? It could just be all Sturm und Drang, or, sound and fury, signifying nothing. But Virgos tend to be fairly pragmatic. And his moon in Pisces, the full moon, can be at times a visionary and creative moon. Now, I'm not signing off on this vision. I'm just trying to give you an understanding about what's driving him astrologically and how this is being manifested in this vision for the future, because Jupiter in Aquarius is very future-oriented, and especially with the sextile with Uranus in Sagittarius. And like I said, there's a lot more to his chart, which I'll get into on Sunday night. So this is the vision of 2030 for Saudi Arabia, and the manifestation of that vision, of course, is Neom. Get into Neom here. This is from the online magazine called D-Zeen, D-E-Z-E-E-N. It is a site that's based on architecture, technology, and design. And the headline here is Saudi Arabia to invest $500 billion in fully automated city. That's a lot of money, $500 billion. $500 billion is a lot of money. Robots may outnumber humans in a new pioneering city built by Saudi Arabia as a new blueprint for sustainable life, which would be entirely powered by renewable energy and served by driverless vehicles in vertical farms. The city called Neom, there's Neo in there, and Steve Crimi added the M, which is the M is for Maktab. That may or may not be the case, but we're looking at the etymology, or the possible etymology for Neo. Is to span an area 26,500 square kilometers, stretching across the borders of northwest Saudi Arabia into Jordan and Egypt. Okay, so this is going to be something that 3 countries, not just Saudi Arabia, will be working on. It is designed to operate an independent economic trade zone with its own laws, and is to become the first private business zone to span 3 countries. So this is a unique vision in the sense that it will be an autonomous zone in many ways. And it will incorporate perhaps the social and political structures of the 2 other countries that it is theoretically going to incorporate with. Saudi Arabia will pump $500 billion from its sovereign wealth fund, the public investment fund, into 9 key investment sectors in the city: energy and water, mobility, biotech, food, technological and digital services, advanced manufacturing, media, and entertainment. You look at it, it looks just like something out of the Venus Project. A website dedicated to the NEOM concept states that the fields will attract high-caliber human resources, and the mundane and repetitive tasks will be carried out by robots. Repetitive and arduous tasks will be fully automated and handled by robots, which may exceed the population, likely making the NEOM's GDP per capita the highest in the world. You know why? You don't have to pay a robot. You just maintain them. That's it. That's it. So they're saving money, theoretically, by investing heavily in robots. This is it. This is it. This is the week, right here this week in October, as we shifted from Libra to Scorpio, with Jupiter conjuncting the Sun in Scorpio, which amplifies the power of transformation, inherent in Scorpio. This is the week that AI has planted its flag, and the future has planted its flag squarely in our consciousness. This is it. This is it. This is an AD-BC moment in our time. Right? The first AI to be granted citizenship, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia announcing NEOM. All these elements will put NEOM at the world's forefront in terms of efficiency, which will make it the best destination in the world to live in. Oh boy. Plans for NEOM were announced at the Future Investment Initiative conference in Saudi Arabia's capital, Riyadh. At the same conference, an intelligent humanoid robot called Sophia, who I believe addressed the UN already, announced she'd been granted citizenship by Saudi Arabia, the first time in history that an AI device has been awarded such status. The city would be solely powered by renewable energy harvested by the sun and via fields of solar panels and windmills. How many times have we heard this? Creating a pollution-free environment, the population would be fed from the produce of vertical farms and solar-powered greenhouses. The development of new disruptive infrastructure would see citizens traveling in automated vehicles, having access to free internet and online education, and living in zero-carbon homes. Ooh. Does it make you feel good? I live in a zero-carbon home. Oh, I feel really good. Walk into the doors of my zero-carbon home, and I just feel like I'm part of the universe on the plus side of the asset and debenture transaction. Oh, yeah, it feels so good. The focus on these sectors will stimulate economic growth and diversification by nurturing international innovation and manufacturing to drive local industry, job creation, and GDP in the kingdom. His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman, chair of the Public Investment Fund. That'll be interesting to see what happens inside of that place, where you have to wear a veil or not. I guess the androids don't have to wear veils because they're theoretically not humans, even though they can be granted citizenship. Interesting. By the way, have you ever really looked at the headdress that the Saudis and the Saudi royalty wear? Have you ever looked at that? Have you ever noticed that black band around the top of their head? You know what that is? That's the ring of Saturn. That is the ring of Saturn that each one of them have on the top of their head. And it's not a halo. Yeah, it can be used to like hold that headdress down a little bit. Sure, it's the ring of Saturn. Kaaba is the black hyperdimensional cube that is connected to Saturn. So what we see coming out of Islam, and really which is part of the kind of the major dominator on this planet, is Saturn worship, Saturnalia, and that's another manifestation of it. We'll get into this, by the way, on my Saturn in Capricorn webinar, which has been moved. For those of you who have signed up for the webinar, it has been moved. rescheduled. They're doing some different stuff over in Astrolata, and they thought it'd be better if the webinar got moved to the 6th of December. So mark that on your calendars, the 6th of December. All right, hold on a second. Let me just make sure. I gotta get the dates right. It could be the 8th. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. It is the 9th. The 9th of December. It's a 6 upside down. 9th of December. It is the Saturn in Capricorn. The Saturn in Capricorn webinar. And we'll talk about this. This is the stuff that we're going to talk about. All this goodness here. The news for the new sustainable city comes as the details of the country's Zaha Hadid Architects Design King Abdullah Petroleum Studies and Research Center in Riyadh are unveiled. Future technologies from the cornerstone for NEOM's development, he added. Disruptive solutions for transportation. From automated driving to passenger drones. Think about that. Passenger drones. Not just a regular old drone that flies around and spies on you. No, you get to sit in the drone. You don't do anything. You just have to sit there and somebody's going to fly it for you, and you go from one part of the city to another part of the city. Passenger drones. Boy, is that futuristic or what? New ways of growing and processing food. Healthcare is centered around the patient for their holistic well-being. Wireless high-speed internet as a free good called digital air. Digital air. Take in that digital air. Oh my God. Not only are we getting oxygen and carbon and traces of nitrogen, but we're getting all those positively charged electrons as well from that good, clean digital air. Free world-class continuous online education. Yeah. It's the education that they're going to want you to have, not the education that you would really want to have. You get it free, but it's, guess what? It's our version of education. We'll teach you the things that you need to know about because we're driving the curriculum via our electronic academies. Full-scale governance, putting city services at your fingertips. I'd like my air conditioning to go down about 4 degrees every Sunday, please. You're a god. I'm sure it's more than that. You're going to be able to talk to people somewhere in the labyrinth of the city government and have a meaningful conversation about some discrepancy that exists between input and output. Building codes that make net zero carbon houses the standard. A city layout that encourages walking and bicycling, all solely powered by renewable energy. Just to name a few, all services and processes in NEOM will be 100% fully automated, with the goal of becoming the most efficient destination in the world, and in turn be implemented on all activities such as legal, governance, and investment procedures, among others. Here we go. So this is where it's all headed. If we continue to go down this track where nothing is disrupted in terms of the larger infrastructure, meaning we don't have a world war, meaning we don't have a world famine, meaning we don't have a collapse in the power grid through an EMP, this is the vector of where we are based on this vision. And this vision is not solely, it is not solely conscripted or is the sole patent of the Saudi Arabian imagination or the vision of Prince Salman. This is really going to be the future of the world. It's the future of the world. And if you think about the demographics of that city, AI will outnumber humans. That's the model. I have been talking about this for years. Years. I started talking about this when? Right around 2009. That's when I had my websites. That's when it started. I've been talking about it before then, but I had a public forum for it. So it is all being unfolded. The revelation of the method is upon us. So we're going to get into the interview with Steve and Krys about Blade Runner 2049, which I believe is really congruent and timely with what's happening in terms of the developments with AI this week. But I also wanted to touch upon briefly what's happening with the Kennedy files. Of course, it's a shit show and a circus, and the clowns are busy. They're busy at work, redacting as we speak. So everything was supposed to be released by midnight last night. It wasn't. I think they had released like 20 pages or something like that. And more are being released. Today, the moon is in Aquarius, by the way. And we're dealing with the Kennedy files with the moon in Aquarius. It was supposed to be delivered when the moon was in Capricorn. Didn't happen. And I've talked about this before, and I wrote about it on my website, where when Kennedy died, Saturn was in what? Aquarius. We see this interesting relationship in correlation between the moon and Saturn consistently. When 9/11 happened, the moon was in Gemini and Saturn was in Gemini. When Las Vegas happened, the ascendant or the rising sign for the event was Gemini. It was right around the same degree as Saturn in Gemini during 9/11. If you go back to the Kennedy assassination, Saturn was in the sign of Aquarius. And I deducted at that point that once Kennedy had been eliminated, that we were going from a vector or a timeline that would have been extremely different had John F. Kennedy survived. We'd be living in a very different world. A very, very different world. And instead, what happened is that he was removed from history. And then we began to fork off and evolve towards what I would call the Dark New Age. Okay? The Dark New Age. We got some of the goodies of the New Age, but really what we were getting was a synthesized, artificial, and highly managed version of reality. So it's interesting now that we have the Kennedy files are coming out on the Aquarian moon, and of course Saturn was in Aquarius when Kennedy got assassinated. So there seems to be this resonance between Saturn and the moon when it comes to these kinds of events. It's interesting, to say the least. If anything, the Kennedy files have really spurred a lot of conversation. And I want to recommend a book for people that are interested in the Kennedy assassination. And it's a book by Michael Collins Piper, who died not long ago. He was a great researcher, a tremendous researcher. And he's one of these guys that I believe was offed. And he was not killed that long ago. He pissed a lot of people off. So Michael Collins Piper was one of the truly great researchers for the Kennedy assassination. And I'm just trying to find the title of his book. I don't want to get it wrong either. Final Judgment. Final Judgment. It says it's America's #1 banned book. Maybe this is what got Piper killed. The missing link in the JFK assassination and conspiracy. And essentially what he does, and this is the third rail, by the way. This is probably what got him off. They said he committed suicide. I'm not so sure about that. But he wound up linking Clay Shaw, who is a key figure in the Kennedy assassination, along with Jim Garrison in the city of New Orleans. He links up Clay Shaw with the Jewish mafia, Meyer Lansky, and a number of other people. And apparently, Kennedy had taken on David Ben-Gurion and was vehemently against Israel having the nuclear bomb. If indeed there is such a thing as a nuclear bomb. Okay, let's buy into that. And according to Michael Collins Piper, he gets into this towards the end of the book. I've read the cliff notes of the book, and I think I may actually purchase a copy myself. It shows a very deep level of collusion between the Israeli mafia, the Jewish mafia, and Clay Shaw, and the events that stem from the fact that Kennedy was not thrilled about the nuclearization of Israel. Now, there are other things that are involved in the Kennedy assassination. It wasn't just that. Kennedy wanted to get us out of the Vietnam War. He also was getting ready to launch a new kind of currency, which I've talked about before. So this was the moment where they had to kill the king. They had to kill the king. Anyway, if you want to learn more about this, you can look up Michael Collins Piper, Final Judgment. It's one of the better books on the Kennedy assassination. Okay, so why don't I do this now? Let's stay with the theme of replicants, clones, robotoids, synthetic futures. And I'll cue up the interview here with Steve and Krys from earlier in the week. Lasts about 45 minutes. So relax, take your shoes off, have a listen. You'll hear my live human voice about 45 minutes from now. So here we go. Here are Steve and Krys Crimi. So as we normally do here at the final day of the month, I open up the studio, the Worldwide Studios, to Steve and Krys Crimi, and we kind of riff on things. And today we're going to be talking about Blade Runner 2049, and Steve has some thoughts that he's prepared around the movie and some pieces around AI that he actually wrote about in his latest book. Hi guys, how are you today?
Hello, Robert. Very good. Nice to see you.
Great to see you and have you back on again. One of the more popular segments that I do on the show. People always look forward to hearing your insights. So let's just jump into this. I saw Blade Runner 2049 about a week ago, and then you saw it recently. And why don't we just open it up? Let me get some of your takes and insights into what you saw and felt around the film.
Yeah, sure. I think you even mentioned it. It even starts like before the movie, when you're watching the previews, and all of a sudden there was one about. Oh gosh, it seemed like so absurd. It was about these U.S. soldiers after 9/11, rushing off to Afghanistan on this horse brigade to fight, like 7 guys on horses fighting like thousands of Taliban with tanks. It was really hard to take. Especially because, as you know, the previews are always a number of decibels louder than the actual movie itself. And there was another war movie there, too.
It was like an assault on the senses. It always seems to be that way. With these previews.
It's why you really got to drag us to the movies these days, But we were told that this was the Blade Runner 2049 was certainly a movie to see on a large screen, and it definitely is. Stylistically and visually, it's really just an astounding movie, I thought. And the story itself, was really interesting. on a bunch of levels, but I guess the level that you have to end up dealing with it. Well, actually, I'm going to think a couple of anomalies. Maybe I'd start there and see what you think, because there's a few things that, that I didn't quite catch on to, like, for example, the bees, as he's going into Las Vegas, right? And there's nothing living anywhere. Yet there's this just huge setup of bees, a number of standard hives, and then these other kind of like weird dangling hives.
Like
we've kept bees. I don't know what to recognize them as, but the thing I was thinking of with that, having like sort of mythological take on things often. So as he's entering the Ryan Gosling character, who's the new Blade Runner, and looking for the old Blade Runner, Harrison Ford, Ned Decker in the movie, not Ned Decker, Rick Decker? No, anyway, first thing I'm not going to
say. Yeah, Decker.
Decker,
yeah.
Right. But he's going through all these old, dilapidated, huge statues of women.
Yes.
Right? And, of course, one of the things I always think of with bees is the Melissa and the goddess, and especially Kybele, the great mother goddess. And she's always associated with bees, as is Diana of Ephesus. You can find bees, bee coins. So, and the Melissa was sort of this female. I won't call it secret society, but it was a culture of priestesses, and it was a thing for the women, and it was all involved with bees and with the goddess. So I'm looking at that, and boy, is that like an inversion of goddess statues, because they're all you really see is like feet and high heels.
Yeah.
Which goddesses sometimes they wear sandals maybe, but usually not the catch me screwy shoes. But anyway, so I thought of that, and so I said, all right, well, here's an interesting inversion, but of course it's going into Las Vegas, the city of sin. So,
but it didn't seem like the beehives were in juxtaposition to the statues.
It was right after the statues.
Yeah, but it wasn't in the same.
Well,
it
was like we're moving from one realm, but it was kind of on the way in there, and he puts his hand into the beehive, and of course nothing happens to him. So either the bees are also artificial constructs, which makes sense because there's nothing to pollinate.
That's right. There's no flowers there. Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but it was like one of those things that felt like it should have some kind of significance, but I couldn't wrap my head around that particular aspect of it.
Well, the idea of the feminine is clearly a major theme in the movie. It's a huge theme in the movie because, number one, one of the first feminine characters we're dealing with is Madam, who is played by Robin Wright.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like this hard-boiled policeman. She plays the Edward James Olmos role in this movie, and she's really strong. She's she comes off as being pretty butch in some ways. I mean, that's her vibe, that's her energy. So she's like the warrior female inside the movie. That's the first character we see that's feminine. Second character we see is Ryan Gosling's holographic girlfriend, who displays more human attributes than most women do in a lot of ways. I mean, she's kind, considerate, caring, pours his drink. She's even involved in some level of self-sacrifice for him to theoretically experience a real woman, but we don't know if she's a real woman or not. Right? So there's...
in the end, it turns out she isn't.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. So, but this is a theme that continues throughout the movie. Then, I don't want to blow the movie for people, but then, we get into the world of Dr. Anna Stelline, who creates memories for Neander Wallace's replicants. And then you've got Wallace's assistant, who is this incredibly strong, powerful, ass-kicking woman. So the narrative and the theme of the feminine
is really pronounced through the film. And even in the end, where there's an intervention in Las Vegas, there's that kind of, mysterious woman with the European accent. She comes in and she's like kind of planning the revolution. She's like sowing the seeds to the revolution. So perhaps the bee symbol is this underlying theme of the feminine throughout Blade Runner 2049. There's even a scene, by the way, when they're in Las Vegas, where they have the holograms. Remember the holograms of Elvis singing?
Right.
I believe there's a hologram of Marilyn Monroe, right?
Right.
Yes.
So you've got all these really very, very potent images, and also the fact that they're all dressed very feminine for the most part. Maybe not so much Robin Wright's character because she's a policewoman.
Right.
But I guess this is also a problem in the theater for some reason. The music was much louder than the dialogue. We actually missed a lot of the dialogue for some reason, which is hard to imagine these days. So you've got all these strong women, and at the same time juxtaposed to it's still like a hard-boiled detective story. And I don't know where to take it. It's just there's so much going on. I think one of the things that I was trying to figure out was that, especially with, say, Ryan Gosling's projected girlfriend, the fact that she's so obviously a construct, but this whole concept of AI making, because it sounds like, a caring, or because it sounds like someone in love, because it looks like someone in love, we are duped into thinking it is.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
So, and actually, if you wouldn't mind, can I read something from my book?
Yeah, go for it.
Because I think it kind of ties in here.
Yeah.
This is it's a piece I wrote about a Rig Vedic poem about. The title of it is "The Death of Death," and it's about a Rig Vedic poem about immortality and death. And in the piece, I correlate it to the sort of the non-sacred version of it, which is this whole movement towards transhumanism and AI. Okay, so I'll try to edit out the things that don't pertain. But anyway, one current understanding of the brain, consciousness, and artificial intelligence. When futurist Ray Kurzweil joined Google and then bought a slew of robotics companies, there was only one possible reason. Mr. Kurzweil would like nothing better than to be able to upload his brain, what he thinks is his consciousness, into a machine and live forever, going from death to immortality in the most mundane, egoic way possible. Another prophetic futurist, Michio Kaku, loves AI and its putative possibilities, like recording dreams, experiences, and consciousness himself. This is something that the transhumanist folks are saying this is a really great thing that we can have. We can record our dreams and things like that. All right. So what I'm going to be saying here is that I think there's a fundamental flaw in all of it. All right. The essence of their unrealized presuppositions runs thus. When computers were being formulated, basically one thing was known about the human brain. Neurons fired or they didn't, a binary system. But even the most evolved computers run today on binary coding, at least the ones that we know about. As computers became more sophisticated, neurologists were able to use them to model brain behavior on them. Now, AI uses computer models formed on theories of how brains work, which were derived from computers themselves, which were derived from a very basic and incomplete understanding of how brains work. So try to understand this. So you have basically people saying, all right, neurons fire, they don't. All right, so this is how our brains work, which isn't how they work. but this is what originally they could see. So the theory being then they started modeling computers, making computers based on this binary system. And so they're thinking that they're replicating the brain by this binary system that computers use. So then they use the computers to model what they think is brain behavior, and now they're basing AI on that. So you see, it's this sort of nested set of presuppositions that follow from a basic one that's wrong, which is that brains are binary. Okay, and I even studied some of this in college, the psychopharmacology of the brain, things like that. So none of it is based on anything real, and all you can get is more and more derivative complex systems. In other words, Siri will sound more and more like how someone thinks a human sounds like. In other words, the brain is not really an intricate, convoluted.
Right. There's some level of appropriation going on, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So and maybe this is my great hope, right? So the other supposition, I don't have to read anymore because I can explain it, is that the meat brain, the actual physical brain itself, is that which generates consciousness, right? And to me, all of transhumanism is based on that presupposition, because otherwise, I don't know how you can transfer consciousness into some sort of machine that operates like a brain, unless the brain itself, whether our brain is a machine. In other words, you have to make everything a machine. So you have to make our brain a machine and make a machine like our brain that will generate consciousness. And so the idea, and so for example, people say, well, the internet is conscious because there are billions and billions of things connected and things like that. And so that's how you get that. So somehow consciousness emerges as what's called an epiphenomenon, this sort of byproduct of this electrical activity.
Right.
So that's the presupposition that I'm desperately hoping it holds up. In other words, so that we don't, so that this is impossible, because as you've probably been seeing, I mean, especially it really seems since the last couple of false flag operations, it seems like on the sidelines there's been more and more, and maybe really especially since the eclipse, now that I come to think of it, there's been more and more AI stuff coming out in the news. About, for example, there was one about in England where they're talking about, this is more about geoengineering the skies to save the coral. Like they really give a damn about the coral.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And and then of course there was the robot that went and gave a talk at the UN.
That's chilling.
Right. So this robot, this of course a female, shows up at the UN, and she said two things that were really interesting. One, I'm here to help mankind, and where have we seen that movie before?
Right.
And her name is Sophia.
And her name is Sophia.
So they co-opted again.
So again, they co-opt the goddess of wisdom. And then she says, let me control your resources, because I can do a better job than you of controlling your resources. Now, so where does that play into? Because this is something we talk about a lot, the Agenda 2030.
Right.
And the sort of, technocratic and, scientific takeover of everything.
Right. Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the Venus Project in some ways, and how the Venus Project is it started off in the imagination of people who really thought that this idea of kind of a futuristic, self-sustaining society, it even got me for a while, where there was a wholly different based economy that was an economy that was based on some level of participation in energy exchange, right? But when you really drill down into the Venus Project ideas, you realize that it becomes a very strict, almost kind of fascistic relationship with resources. and that what they've determined is that the planet has a load that it can handle, right? There's a planetary load.
Right.
And anything above and beyond that planetary load must be eliminated. So that probably means less humans, or it means less businesses or industries that add to the load. So those have to be eliminated as well. And there seems to be some very kind of cut and dried analysis that would be related to that. So if you have a cybernetic guru or an AI guru that says, yes, we can do that based on all these different parameters, likely it could be more efficient. But what's the cost and what's the price of that? What are we exercising as a result of that? And I think Blade Runner 2049, for all of its nuances about the goddess, because it's clearly saying that the wave of the future is feminine. I mean, that's what the movie is saying. Harrison Ford is kind of a vestige. He's this old guy hanging out in Las Vegas, drinking the last remnants of all the booze with a dog that may or may not be real. You've got a character who is kind of in the Deckard vein. He's 2.0. He's a millennial version of Deckard. He's hard-boiled. He's tough. But at the end of the movie, he's not the one that is moving humanity forward. In fact, there's a huge letdown on his part, right? We're not going to get into it, but he's crushed, actually, when he finds out that he's not going to be playing the role that he began to envision for himself.
Right.
So to me, this is clearly, when you just boil it down to masculine and feminine characters, or the masculine and feminine energy, it is the feminine symbolism and the feminine energy that emerges out of Blade Runner 2049. To me, that's the message, ultimately, about the film. And there's a lot more in there, which, of course, is bonding on an emotional level with AI, which is exactly what you were talking about.
Right. Well, I think that's part of the intention of the movie, and that, of course, I wouldn't be happy about that, because in the context of the movie, right, the Ryan Gosling character does not think, he understands he's not a human, and he obeys his boss, and he has a job to do. And I don't think the Harrison Ford character is a replicant. That's my take on it. There's really very little to no evidence. I mean, in the book, he questions it. But the thing about the Ryan Gosling character, the second Blade Runner, is that it's only when he starts to think that he's human, that he starts becoming human and acting like a human.
That's right.
Right? So he thinks, so all of a sudden at some point the idea, because of the birth date, which of course I wrote you that it's my father's birthday.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
My father was born 6/10/29. This one is 6/10/21, and you did the whole interesting thing on that chart. But as soon as he has that thought, the first thing he does, right, is he disobeys his superior. He doesn't tell her about it.
That's right.
He doesn't tell her his memory of the horse with that same date on it.
Right. He acts out of character. He acts out of he acts outside of his programming.
Right. So, and then from then on, he has the idea in his head that he's human, and from that point on, he starts acting as a human. I forget, the one-eyed woman says what was something like the most human thing you could do is sacrifice for a greater cause. Is that it's something?
Yeah,
like that?
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So so of course he ends up acting, the most human, and of course saves Harrison Ford. We'll just assume everybody saw the movie. We don't have to worry about it at this point. So he saves Harrison Ford. He does all these things, and then he just pretty much dies of exhaustion.
Collapses on the steps of the future.
Yeah. So I think I think one of the agendas of the movie is, as you say, to get us to become emotionally attached to an AI, and this is a whole other realm about manipulation of the emotions, because actually the book do androids dream of electric sheep, begins with this incredibly comic scene between Decker and his wife. In the book, he has a wife, and everyone has what are called mood organs. And did you read? I don't know if you read the book.
No, I've not read the book.
Okay, so they have an argument over. So you can dial any mood you want on these mood organs. So you can dial a mood, you can dial being argumentative, and then she says, well, I'm going to dial it up to 9, and I'll be really even more argumentative to you. And they have this bizarre argument about changing, about just dialing all these numbers on the mood organ, which is it's so Philip K. Dickian. It's just brilliant. The book, of course, is very different than both the movies, because the other thing that's in the book that is not in either of the movies is this: everyone is watching TV all the time, and they watch a character called Buster Friendly. And Buster Friendly ends up turning out to be an AI in the book, which I don't know why nobody could figure it out, because he's on TV 24/7.
Right.
And it's sort of this upbeat, happy character. And then everyone belongs to this religion called Mercerism, which goes back to the mood organs, and you grab the mood organs and you can have this sort of unitive experience with this thing called Mercer. And then at the end of the movie, so everyone in that population is sort of addicted, so that's their religious fix.
Right.
And then at the end of the book, this Buster Friendly on TV goes and says, I got a big announcement, and they're building up to the announcement, and he says, Mercer is a fabrication. It's all a complete lie. And so it's just really, really interesting, and it's very, of course, Philip K. Dickian to just construct a reality and pull the rug
out from under you. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
And that and the fact that everyone keeps pets, sheep and things like that, or because there are no real or very few real animals left. So the book runs a very different trajectory, because the replicants in the book really you catch them because they have no empathy. And you catch them because they can't, in other words, they can act like they're empathic.
Right.
They act like they care, but they can't do it. They have to process first. So that's how you catch them. Right. So they're not quick enough to be purely empathic.
Right.
You have to. That's how you catch them. So even from that, you're left with every character in the movie. So what are you left with? You're left with people acting as if they're empathic, and does that give them consciousness? Or or as the Robin Wright character says, you've been doing pretty well without a soul this far.
Yeah, that was a good line. Yeah, she was actually interested in him on an intimate level, right? She had feelings for a replicant. You could see that in that one scene, right?
Right. She gives him a chance to escape.
Yeah.
Whereas if he was just nuts and bolts to her,
what would it matter? Just there'd be another one to replace him. What did you think of that scene where he would come in from one of his missions and he would look into the electric eye, and they would ask him these questions over and over again? Usually using one word over and over again, and you'd have to repeat the word over and over again. What did you think of that whole process around that? I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I found it interesting, and I really wasn't able at the time, and we just watched it last night, to make a lot of sense of it. So was it that he had to pick the right word out of the phrase in order?
I think it was his response time. I think if he had to think about it, then there was an incongruency that he wasn't with the program.
Okay, right? Yeah. So that was establishing his baseline. His baseline as an android with his particular thought process and his particular job.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that was the one thing that I felt was sort of a weak point in the movie was she's saying to him, Robin Wright, you are so far off your base with your responses, and yet she still lets him go. That was like, okay, all right, I guess it just had to be in order for the story to proceed. But I thought if you're going to get nitpicky, that would be so unlikely. If you're that far off base and you're just an android.
Yeah, I would agree with that, with the exception that she's also willing to sacrifice herself to him in the scene where Wallace's assistant comes to track him down. And she basically says, you better just get it over with. Right? Mm-hmm. So, to me, that's kind of congruent with this idea that he's so far off. I mean, theoretically, she might have been in love with him, right? She might have been in love with a replicant.
Yeah, there was that implication.
Yeah, so even even when your man comes home and he's way off his baseline some nights, you forgive him, right?
All right, that probably works.
Yeah, there you go.
It's kind of a cop buddy thing too. Taken to someplace else. No, the cop buddy. The cops. There's always like a buddy cop.
That's true. It's like, yeah, I'll give you 24 hours to get out of here. I've seen it. Yeah. Go ahead.
But of course, interesting. That's first of all, that I guess they weren't originally showing it in Las Vegas or something like that because of the because Las Vegas was in the movie because of what happened or didn't happen there.
Right. Exactly.
Which actually it was interesting because that echoes back to Dr. Strangelove in the scene where the Slim Pickens character is, when they finally, get their orders to drop the bomb, and he's going through the emergency packet,
right?
And he's going through this, that, and the other thing. He comes up with a condom, and he says, something along the lines of, good for a night in Dallas. Of course, the movie opened the week that JFK was shot.
Oh, yeah, right, exactly.
So they quickly brought the movie back and changed Dallas to Vegas.
Oh, interesting. Well, there seems to be a connection, obviously.
So I don't know. There was just kind of an odd correlation of something happening just as this movie was coming out, and just as Strangelove was coming out, which is certainly one of the great movies of all time.
No, absolutely. So it's a fascinating movie. And I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call it a great movie, but I didn't feel like I was getting ripped off for the $8.50 or whatever I spent to get into the film. I mean, I was entertained, and visually it's a stunning movie. What's fascinating is that movie pretty much went into production around 1995.
This one?
When I say production, that's when the scripts were considered and, formally starting the producing aspect of the film. And if you looked at the credits of the movie, one of the producers is Bud Yorkin. And Bud Yorkin has he's been dead for a while. So Bud Yorkin's daughter, I think, came on and finished being one of the producers. But that tells you how far back it goes, because he was invested in the movie, and I thought it was a really interesting choice for Bud Yorkin, specifically because of the TV programming he'd been involved with for a long period of time, which I talked about on the show. Yeah, him and Norman Lear are part of what's called the Great Purge in television. And
the whole beginning, All in the Family scene was shot a few blocks from where I grew up in Queens.
Really?
Where all those houses are?
Yeah.
About 7-8 blocks from where I grew up in Queens. It's
right on the
Brooklyn-Queens border, Ozone Park. So, so he was a very, very typical character from the world I grew up in.
Yeah.
Archie Bunker.
So, I just thought it was interesting that Bud Yorkin was involved in the production. And producers get involved with movies for various reasons, right? Like, one of the producers of The Elephant Man was Mel Brooks. And I thought, well, that's a very odd choice for Mel Brooks to get behind a David Lynch film. Well, the reason why he wanted to get behind it is because he wanted to put Anne Bancroft in a movie. It was his wife. Right?
Huh.
So she was one of the stars of the Elephant Man. So he had a vested interest. So I would assume that Bud Yorkin had a vested interest from a sociological level. To have the second Blade Runner movie drive an agenda, right? And I think we can distill it down to three things. One, the kind of snuggling up to AI as a reality. Two, this whole idea of the feminine emerging and the playing the role of the world savior or the hero/heroine, whereas the male and the Ryan Gosling character is the one who sacrifices. Right?
Yeah, and and the other thing I thought of with the bees, of course, you would think of the AI as having a hive mentality also.
Oh, that's a good catch, hive mind for sure.
And that seems to be, like at that scene where the whereas the rebel faction sort of appears.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that scene. I mean, did they have to build that into the movie? Did there have to be this revolution, this AI revolution? And who are they rebelling against anyway? Was it humans? I mean, what did you think of all of that?
Right. So what did they claim? I mean, of course we haven't even gotten into the, not the virgin birth, but the birth of the savior and the doctor who's inside the bubble, who may or may not realize who she is.
Exactly.
But she's very much like, so another form of the goddess where she's just generating everyone's dreams.
Right.
And once you have memories and dreams, what's the difference between them being real and not being real? I mean, that's of course that's the nature of memory too, is that, they change.
Isn't she like Ariadne? Wouldn't that be like her kind of role in the film?
Ariadne was ran the thread into the labyrinth that Theseus followed. Right. So I'm not sure of the connection, but yeah, as far as weaving things.
Well, I was saying about weaving, being a web weaver, weaving things together. She lives inside of that biodome.
Yeah. And it wasn't even a biodome; it was a holodeck.
Virtual holodeck, right?
It was a holodeck. So somehow she's connected with this rebellion, although she may not know she's part of it, and may not know whether whether or not she's able to conceive of a replicant.
Right.
So that's all left to maybe Blade Runner 2069 or something like that. But like I said, the other woman who lost the eye. So there's a whole backstory there that is not there that I could pick up on. But is the rebellion necessary? Well, I guess somehow that's somehow the idea of rebellion is hooked up with the idea of hope. And that there's some sort of hope, because the future there is can't get too much bleaker.
Exactly.
Where you got acres of protein farms, the best you can do is grubs.
Right.
And so really nothing living but humans and replicants. But you're right. So it's not a revolution of the humans, and not so it's a revolution by and for the replicants.
That's right.
And then of course the what's his name, Jared Leto character.
Yeah.
Another thing with the eyes too. He has those sort of opaque eyes, and he's sort of the so he's really the transhuman.
He's like the architect. He reminds me of the architect from the Matrix.
Yeah. So he's the demiurge, thinking that he is the deity, right? And
yes.
He is also the model for transhumanism. Oh, look, you can stick a chip into his neck.
Right.
You know, I mean, this is Kurzweil's wet dream is to see something like that.
I mean, the AI thing is coming at you from all these different angles inside the film.
Yeah, so let's say to correlate, and it's happening. It seems to be really, really accelerating at this point. It just seems like it's coming out, and it's coming out as a fait accompli.
So is this to soften everyone up?
It is. Well, it is. It's predictive program. It's not even predictive. It's actually happening now.
It is happening now, and the whole so the other thing that is also a pretty big part of this is the retinal scanning and the biometrics that are inside of it, and it's almost again a fait accompli. Like this is just how people access things, whatever they are. Yeah.
Right. So was there a story that the NHL is going to start implementing facial scanning?
The NHL is going to do this, or going to what extent? I
don't know. It was just a piece that I didn't finish reading it, but somehow I don't know whether it's some teams or it's the NHL itself. Yeah, to have facial recognition software I don't know whether it's like scanning the crowds or what. You know, all for our protection, as they say. You know.
Yeah, that's Gary Bettman going out and having a few dinners with Michael Chertoff. What's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick funny story though. A friend of mine was used to work in Manhattan, and you know, so Penn Station is right underneath Madison Square Garden, and apparently, so there was a Ranger game, and apparently there was like a really bad opera performance. And apparently, the opera crowd that got out was like so rowdy and so bad that like the hockey fans like were running away from them.
So they came in over the top of the hockey fans. Wow.
Yeah. So opera fans who don't like the performance.
Stay away from the pissed off opera fans.
Yeah.
They got a bad version of Wagner or something. Hey, so
they take their stuff seriously, opera fans.
So you have a new book that just came out. Do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Well, it's a series of books. What Logo Sophia is doing, myself and my friend Don Dolcinos, who he a number of years ago in '88 wrote a biography of this character named Fitzhugh Ludlow, and we both went to the same college as him, Union College in Schenectady, and belonged to this particular society that was born there, and he's kind of like a forgotten person in American literature. He's friends with Mark Twain, hung out with all the bohemians in New York at a place called FAFS, P-F-A-F-F-S, and with like Whitman and all these New York writers. And what he did in 1856 as a 20-year-old when he graduated from college. While he was at college as a 19-year-old, he started taking hashish from a pharmacist, and apparently he had an experimental nature before that. And so what he did was basically take the hashish. Sometimes he got his friends to do it, and he would wander the Union College campus. And because he had this incredible imagination, he was well versed in Greek mythology and the Arabian Nights, he would paint. He painted his visions like no one else did. It's still like considered among the greatest visionary drug novels. And of course, it's the first entheogenic novel. Not novel. It's a biography, memoir that was written in the United States way before everyone else. You can even find Terence McKenna reading from it on YouTube. His name is Fitzhugh Ludlow. And we can talk about him, again some other time. But I think, anyway, so he's a real interesting character. And so we have that book and his book of his travels across the continent.
That was Steve and Krys Crimi from Monday. And that moment of silence was
15, 16 years
in memorial for JFK.
Developing the city.
Not really.
And so his report on them and meeting those guys was really incredible.
Rounding up
And then he's written a whole
some
bunch
other
of short
information.
stories.
In actually researching
So it's 7
some of the things that have been emerging out of the California fire, I highly recommend a YouTube channel called
So
A
is it
Plain
all out
Truth.
now? Are you
That's
keep scaling?
I got the first
Truth.
4 in print, and the next 3 we're still
And
working
the
on.
Okay.
information
So-
about
Major project.
the
So if
California
you have any
fires
interest
that's
in
being brought out
theogens,
by the author of the
some
website
really
is
fascinating,
really kind of mind-blowing
some
and gives
underground
immense amount of
characters,
credibility
American
to
culture.
the
People might be
prospect
interested in this,
that
right?
Santa
I
Rosa
think so,
and
especially,
actually
the hash
Sonoma,
issue has
Napa,
been
and surrounding
in
areas
print, and of course
hit
in the
by
60s and 70s.
energy-directed
emerged
lasers,
as a very popular book.
which started the
So all this
fires
stuff is, we just made these
in
beautiful,
very dramatic fashion,
really beautiful
leaving most of the
renditions,
agriculture
and,
intact
we
while
did
decimating
Albert Bierstadt,
the structures, the
drawings
houses,
in the
cars,
cross-country
buildings,
trip
et cetera, et cetera, et
book,
cetera.
the
So
continent,
go look at it. A
really
Plain
famous,
Truth
really his
YouTube
paintings
channel,
were going
Plain
for
Truth,
$25,000
because you want to stay informed.
in the 1860s in
And-
New York.
Wow.
So
Hate to say it, but there is there's a war going on
so
out
anyway,
there,
yeah. So
and it's a
turn-
silent
Go to the
war.
website, read a little bit about
Quiet
the books,
weapons
see if
for a
anything
silent
interests you,
war.
but they're like, they're
And we
beautiful
started to
editions,
look at that
American
yesterday on
generated,
yesterday's show
and,
with what happened in the
really nice gifts.
1990s
That sounds great.
And everything
So
was
let's
the
just-
seed
Let's
bed
just
and the
break it down.
groundwork
We have a
for what
holiday
would take
season
place
coming up.
during the
And
2000s.
they could make some
Before the
really
90s were in the
interesting
80s,
gifts
it's a
for
pretty sleepy decade,
people
to be
that are
quite
into,
honest with you.
Theogens.
We
and
have some
underground
Carter,
American
we have some Reagan,
characters.
we have the takedown
And,
theoretical of the
yeah,
Russians,
what else
we have the
do we want to say about
rise
that? That's
of the
about it,
globalist
right?
system.
We pretty much covered that ground.
but it doesn't
Yeah,
really
I
kind of
think,
turn its
we got around to
ugly
things that
head
I really
towards
too much else
us
that I
here
was
in
gonna-
this country. Now, there are other events that happened in the 90s,
Oh,
well,
just one
in
other
other
thing
countries,
about
but
the
clearly,
movie.
clearly
One
they were
thing about,
anticipating
is that I
during the
Wallace,
Clinton era
this whole thing with the
that
angels
there
too,
would be
so
people
that's the whole, like,
who
gossip
would
over whether
Yeah, I mean, that
waking
comes
up.
back from the
They
first
would
Blade
be on
Runner,
the side of
right, where
awakening due to the fact
original replicants
that Clinton
they're
and the
off-world.
Clinton administration
Right.
and they come
would be
back
vulnerable.
to Earth, or
and vulnerable they
playing the role
were
of the
because there
fallen
was so much
angels.
information out there
Right,
during that
right.
time.
So-
Even
so,
without
yeah,
the
'cause he
internet, the
says
internet was in its
something along
nascent
the
period.
lines of,
Right around
angels are
96,
neither good nor
97 was
bad,
really starting to kind
Yeah.
of
something like
come
that.
online and
The line
come
is
into
kind
its
of hard.
own.
I had a little trouble
Yeah,
picking
that's
it up.
But even
that's
that
that's
pre-
kind of
96,
a
97
page out
period,
of Gnosticism.
people were
So,
watching
yeah,
videos,
but it's
that were
also
being
this
circulated
idea that,
about what was happening
they're
with
probably the
Clintons
bastard
and
children
down
of
in
the
Mena,
fallen angels in
Arkansas,
some ways.
and all the nefarious
For
activities
whatever
that were
reason,
taking
he's
place
picked up on
there.
that
So
and become the new
there was
generator of the replicant
a
culture,
small
which
surplus of
apparently the
information.
difference between the two
And if you were awake
is that
and you were switched
the
on back
first,
then, you knew what was going
version,
on.
the
And
Tyrell
certainly it was
replicants are eternal,
was
right? They
visible.
don't
You
die.
could definitely see it, and I
And
totally knew what was
the
happening.
newer version, the
So that was a
lawless
time
versions,
where they
have
made
an
a concerted
extermination
effort to
date.
go
They
after
don't know
and
when
nip
that
in the
is,
bud
but they get shut
any
down.
kind of I wouldn't call it
Well, this has been great. I'm
opposition.
glad you were
I
able to
guess
watch the film and we
that's
can talk
what the-
about it.
what we
Yeah,
have to
just
work
like just
with,
like the
with
clones.
the,
have an expression.
vocabulary
Yeah, exactly.
and vernacular.
Exactly.
And I remember at that
You just
time
find your
also
way
the
to the
militia
soup.
movement was
It
starting
just-
to take
just
off, and
face
of course
planted right into the
that was
universe, of
infiltrated
course.
like COINTELPRO
Well,
and
you guys
a lot
have a
of the
great
militias
week and a great
were starting to be
month,
taken
and,
down, and
we'll see you back
and
here
the people that were
officially
running the militias were
at the
were
end
kind of a
of,
joke, to be honest with you. I hate to say it,
October,
but
I'm sorry, November,
you look at
and
them,
we'll get right
can't
into
believe it.
whatever.
It's like-
we
it's like
talk
this
about
guy
then. So thanks
just
again
got
for
out
coming
of
on.
his
I appreciate
parents'
it.
basement
Yeah, thanks,
and
Robert.
decided to
All right, take care.
buy a gun and run a militia. Anyway, so I was just trying to establish that, and here we are now in 2017, in the midst of what could, if you are willing to take that leap, and more people are. I hate to say it, but it's true. More and more people are willing to take that leap in a field of open and naked aggression against the populace of the U.S. and even beyond. But bringing that back to where we started today's show off, is that in order to create a new society or a new world, the old one must be eradicated. And that eradication takes place on a number of different levels. It takes place on a religious level. So in order for the old world, which had been dominated by Christianity, to be phased out, Christianity itself must be eradicated and must be eliminated. And then a new religion or a new organizing principle must be put into place. Now, it clearly looks like that's Islam. And based on the current based on the model that Crown Prince Solomon is proselytizing, it will be a moderate version of Islam. I always thought the Baha'i would be the new religion because it combines elements of Islam and Christianity. It's a syncretic belief. It's set up to be the religion of the New Age. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. Maybe they'll just go straight to moderate Islam. But Islam is being distributed all throughout the world through waves and waves of either refugees or settlements that are taking place all across this country. And here in Austin, Texas, and outside of Austin, just up the road from me, Dripping Springs, and even across the street from my house, I have a mosque. It doesn't look like a mosque, but it's a mosque nonetheless. And I'm seeing more and more women in burqas shopping at the local grocery store. So it is the distribution of a people, a religion, a lifestyle, and this is kind of an alignment with what we're seeing with this 2030 vision of the Saudi Crown Prince. So you must eradicate a religion. That's important. In order to start a new world, you must eradicate religion. In order to start a new world, you must eradicate history. You've got to take away things like statues. This is very important because statues are these symbolic anchors of historical persona who have a place in the evolution of a country or the evolution of a state or the evolution of a city, and they're part of a historical narrative, whether you like them or not. They're there. They're part of it. Well, those must be eradicated. They've got to be taken away. So now we have statuary being disassembled. So religion is being disassembled. It has been for a while now, at least Christianity as we know it. Statuary is being taken down. What about learning? Well, if you have been paying any attention, there's been an assault on sort of the historical references of Western culture in colleges. And in Cambridge, they are talking about the decolonization of the syllabus. So instead of teaching classics, instead of teaching people like Shakespeare, or instead of teaching about people like William Blake, or instead of teaching about people like Dante, or some of the great thinkers, whether you agree with them or not, like Hume in the Enlightenment, and a number of other characters and figures, right? I mean, instead of going down that path, they're decoupling from that historical perspective. And they're going to be putting in modern works instead of classical works. They're going to be bringing in other languages. So now what we're seeing is the eradication of not just statuary, and not just the organizing principle, which is Christianity, but also the foundational works that Western civilization has been built upon. So we're seeing the eradication of all this before our very eyes. Before our very eyes. And there's more. What about morality? Well, we had families, right? Families are really important. Families were a cornerstone of a certain type of civilization. We've seen the eradication of that. Families have been blown up. And that's been going on for a long time. That started since the 1970s, when no-fault divorces came into play, and the Catholic Church rewired their rules for divorce through Vatican II, making just it's just a trifle. It's just a trifle act. Oh yeah, and it's right in there with abortion. It's just all so convenient, and just get rid of it. And just get rid of that pesky life form. Just get rid of that pesky marriage. It's so convenient. So that eradication has been taking place for a while now. So we have the eradication of the family. We have the eradication of statuary. We have the eradication of religion. Correct. And here's Trump, who's an anachronism. And he's saying, make America great again. This is an interesting comment because in its own way, it's trying to be visionary, right? He's trying to be visionary by being revisionist. You know, it's not. It's a different kind of model than, say, what Salman is saying. Hey, look, we've got this great vision for Saudi Arabia. Come on, people. Come on, people. Join in. This is going to be fantastic. It's aspirational. If you're a Saudi Arabian and you're kind of buying into this King Solomon in whatever kind of medieval feudal government that's already in operation there, you go, oh, this might change some things. I might buy into this. This sounds pretty good. Makes me proud to be a Saudi Arabian, or even with the Chinese, right? You listen to Xi Jinping and you say, "Yeah, I'm proud to be somebody from China. Boy, we're gonna kick ass. We're gonna rule the world here in about 30 years." Where is that message coming from in this country? It's coming from Trump, but it's a revisionist kind of visionary thing. And it's really hard to, in some ways, build on the past. And I think that there are really important elements to that past that we have just let go by the wayside. Like, you don't really appreciate it until it's gone, right? You don't really appreciate some of the things that the past has had to offer until it's completely gone. And then you're sitting out there and you got your ass in the wind and it's naked and it's cold. And yet, you have free internet somewhere, somehow. That the Wi-Fi signal through the 5G carriers is ubiquitous. That would be great. So then we have to have, in order to create a new society, we have to have the eradication of a social model and how we've lived. And I give you Sonoma and Napa as being the suburban experience, par excellence. And that has penetrated our psyche and our consciousness, because they too have been eradicated overnight with the flash of a light in the sky at night, right? I mean, that's what's happened. So now we're seeing the eradication of how we've lived physically. So you add all these things together, and what do they add up to? They add up to the fact that we are being moved into a new world, that we are being moved into a new society, and that everything we knew about the society and the world that we have inhabited is going to be erased. Or at least there's an effort to erase that, so that they can create something completely new. Now, this is a really interesting sort of angle and twist, because that newness is coming. Regardless of whether or not they're steering it, it is coming. So what they're doing is they're getting on board early. They're driving that narrative. They're driving the model, because they know that from an evolutionary perspective, whether it's Steve Bannon's fourth turning, whether it's some form of what the New Agers might call ascension, right? Whatever it is, there's something that's coming, and it's new. It's different. It's unlike what we've experienced before. That is an agnostic opening in many ways. Now, theoretically, it would be geared towards higher consciousness and some more advanced model of being able to live and treat each other, but also living in what I would call the light of truth. And this is where the divergence takes place. This is where we have one version, which would be the theoretical New Age or an evolutionary component to where we're headed. And that's all in the astrology coming down the pipeline. Saturn in Aquarius, Pluto in Aquarius, it's coming. And then there's the other version, which I talked about at the beginning of the show, which really forked off during the Kennedy assassination when Saturn was last in Aquarius. And that's where it all began. That's where it all started. And Saturn in Aquarius will be the culmination of that. Will be the culmination of that vision. Or the fork in the timeline, so to speak. So we're living in a very interesting time of social eradication. And I understand where Trump is coming from with the whole MAGA thing. But there needs to be also some connection between the past and the future. Because in many ways, the past is dead. It's happened. And there are things that we can pull from it into the future, but we're not going back, right? We've got to stay on our feet, on our toes. And we've got to take those things that are really important and really sacred, things like raising a family, things like nurturing, caring, bonding with one another, all those Cancerian elements which are part of the past and part of the elements of Trump's chart with Saturn, Mercury, and Venus all in Cancer. So that part we've got to distill and bring into the future. But we need a vision of not just making America great again. Because that in and of itself, while it resonates with us at kind of a cellular level, an organic and analog cellular level, it is not going to be the thing that is going to supersede these other visions of the future. So we've got to take that mega one step further, not just to making America great again. And it's a great little tagline, right? But there's more to it than that. It's taking those elements and creating something new. That there's a fusion of what we bring from the past and what we divine as sacred in our lives with something that is visionary. It has a real visionary appeal. This is what's missing. This is the one component that's missing. It's not just, getting back to those core values, which is really important, but those core values as they are translated and recreated into a 21st century model. You do that, and it is a model that is competitive with any other model that's out there. And even more so because it is not just the synthetic wet dream of people flying around in pilotless drones. Like, there's more to life than that. There's more to life than just being able to order up a box of sushi and have it dropped off at your door via a drone. I mean, there's more to it. So, could that be cool? Whatever. That might be cool for a minute. But this is where we are. And unfortunately, what we're seeing now is we're witnessing the process of eradication. And that is the kind of the nexus of what I was talking about on Wednesday, which is this out-and-out war that's taking place. And it is a full spectrum war across a lot of different areas of our lives. And we have to be aware of it. And by being aware of it, we share the ideas and we share the knowledge. And as far out as it gets, right? As far out as a Plain Truth and the videos on that YouTube channel are bringing evidence to the fact that these fires were not only not the byproduct of some kind of natural catastrophe, but they were instigated, and they were instigated at such a high degree of technology that even beginning to embrace that as a reality is terrifying. That, number one, people would be involved in this if we think there are people who got involved in this. Maybe it was just a software program that coordinated everything. We don't know, right? I mean, since we are in the age of AI. And that it could happen randomly, like that. That's the terrifying part. So as terrifying as it is when you embrace that idea, because when you think, oh, it's just an act of nature, oh my God, these poor people, it softens the blow in some ways. You can check in on that. You can check that box. But if you're really doing your work, if you're really doing your best to stay abreast of what's happening, and you're really taking things in, then you're looking at staring down some of the really hard, cold facts of what's going on the planet, and particularly in this country. So hang in there, hang on. This is it. We're shooting the rapids. And some people say, hey, these are the end times. We're living in the days of Revelation. And all you got to do is prepare yourself and get right with the Lord, and all will be fine. And hey, look, I won't deny that. You got to get on the right side of that equation too. You really do. But you know what? We're humans, and we are curious, and we're a touch rebellious. And when we wake up and we see what's going on, and we apply our own conscious awareness to the events that are taking place, profound things can happen. Absolutely profound things can happen. Where the witness becomes an active participant merely by witnessing. Remember, go back to Heisenberg right? And the fallibility theory, where Heisenberg illustrates that when a person is watching an experiment, they're not even participating in the experiment. They're just observing. Their mere observation changes the outcome of the experiment. Particle or wave, particle or wave. The witness is an active participant. Remember that. And as we witness the end of history, or at least the attempt to eradicate history, as we witness everything that's going on right now, your active participation as a witness is having an impact on how all this unfolds. And that's the best thing I can leave you with today. So, kind of a long show, but I think worth it. And I apologize for that little delay in the middle there, or in the last third. And I can't thank Steve and Krys enough for coming on and bringing their wisdom to the show at the end of the month, every month. And you can find them at Logosophia Books online if you're interested in his books. Steve's book's great. And some of the other works that we talked about on the show. And more. Okay. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Have yourself a great weekend. I'll be back on Sunday nights for the Sunday night live stream. We're going to get into the chart of Crown Prince Solomon and see what that's.